Welcome back, everyone, to Open Line. Happy to have with us David Plazas. He's the opinion editor with the Tennessean, talking about the future of Nashville. Is Nashville a progressive city? And just today, you were moderating. You do a lot of moderating.
I do.
Which I respect. I respect that a lot. I see it all over. David Plazas moderating this or that. You were moderating a forum on growth with the Kansas City Chamber,
yes.
right? So they're down here visiting, seeing what's going on with us, and you moderate this forum. What were your takeaways from that? Kind of how did that discussion go, and
Sure.
what stood out?
Sure, and this is a group of business, community, education, political leaders who are coming to see what is working. You know, Nashville's story has gotten around the world, and people are seeing some really great things, but they really want to get at what are the successes, but also what are the challenges. So since I've had a lot of experience writing about growth issues, they asked me to moderate this forum about, or this panel about the other side of growth. And so we had representatives from labor unions, community activists, and also an official from the Metropolitan Housing Authority, the MDHA. And we had this really honest discussion about where growth is working and where it's not. One of the big takeaways from the labor side was what we're missing here is a pipeline. You know, we have asked continuously for a pipeline to help us train workers who don't have the skills right now to compete for jobs like bricklaying or pipe fitting or other things like that, and have them have a better life. You know, it was from their side obviously very pro-union, and from the Metro side, the MDHA side, it was more about, you know, we're really trying to show equity. You know, there's this Envision process, Envision KC process of how are you going to turn KC homes, historically public housing, into mixed income development, and that's going through that. We talked a little bit about that and what the consequences might be with a change in mayoral administration. Mayor Briley had promised $500 million in public funds there. Mayor-elect Cooper was not so hot on that. So we'll see what happens in terms of how those priorities shift, and whether or not these labor groups will get the help they would like to get to train more workers.
So that's one aspect of it, and that's fascinating. And you said, as we went to break, it was a large numerical victory as far as the mayor's race. Cooper got 69% of the vote.
Yes.
You said he was endorsed by groups that aren't normally on the same side.
Correct.
So it's a fascinating situation where he comes in with support from groups that aren't always on the same side. And so the question then, the challenge then becomes, is he going to be able to make all these people happy? It's a tall order in front of him. Clearly people were frustrated, they want to change, but he's got a big challenge in front of him going forward.
He does. It's really tough. You know, you had nearly 70% of the voters. Now, it was a small voter turnout, so in total about 15% of registered voters had cast their votes for him. And that's tough because you have a community that overall is not civically engaged, either on purpose or because they don't know or what it is. So, but he was very successful at creating a campaign that brought together numerous sides that normally wouldn't be coming together, like people who supported Donald Trump as president, or people who supported Megan Barry as mayor, as a liberal mayor. And so it was really fascinating. Now the question is, will he be able to please everybody? You know, history shows us that no, he's not going to be. He's going to have some tough decisions ahead. And my colleagues at the Tennessean have already reported on one of those stories about the Community Oversight Board. Community Oversight Board was passed overwhelmingly in 2018. About 60% of voters voted for it. The Mayor Briley, even though he said he was for it, did not support the ballot initiative, and so but people who supported the COB were more supportive of Cooper. Fraternal Order of Police opposed the COB, so I think one of the first fault lines we'll see is, what does John Cooper do about that? Now he has until Saturday to really think about those things. He won't be inaugurated until then, but it's going to be one of the big tasks ahead, because the people said, we want this board. We want this board to basically look at cases of police misconduct or alleged police misconduct, and we feel the police are not cooperating with us.
Yeah, that's one of several issues. Very interesting. All right, let's go to Jim. Hello, Jim.
Hello, thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
I think the reason I was kind of against the property tax rate increases is, and I'm going to take just a small area of Nashville, but it's happening all over town. I used to work over off Centennial Boulevard, around the 51st Avenue Centennial Boulevard area. And I was going down Tennessee Boulevard the other day, and where I just took one block of Tennessee Boulevard, there used to be 6 fairly small houses, probably appraised at $40,000 or $50,000 each along that one block. Now there's 12 tall and skinny ones that probably have about $250,000 apiece appraisal. What I can't understand is the rate, the amount of housing that's changed from smaller houses to multiple houses on the same lots. Why aren't we seeing just an astronomical increase in revenues from property taxes from that? And it's happening all over town.
Jim, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think that's the biggest question. Where there was one house, you know, in neighborhoods where there was one house, suddenly now there are two houses that are worth double what the one house that was there before. And so that's more traffic, and that's more people in the schools, and people are wondering, all right, that's fine, but why aren't we awash in money? And every time they would hear that there's this being cut or there's not enough money for that, they would look at all the houses all around them, and they would just wonder what in the world is going on. And so I've asked Mayor Briley, I've asked everyone that question, but kind of I know you have too. And what do you think about what Jim's saying there?
Yeah, no, it's a really relevant topic of discussion. I was talking to the chamber folks about that today, and we have a reassessment of property valuation every 4 years. The last one was in 2017, and according to state law, you cannot collect more in revenue from existing property than you did the previous 4 years. So it becomes something where when you have that property base, that shifts, and so that's why some areas of town will see greater tax increases and others might see some modest tax decreases. Now eventually you can collect more on new developments, but that takes time to come into the coffers. Now the other thing that happens is that there's a mathematical formula that causes the property tax rate to lower if something like that happens where you see tremendous growth like you did in Nashville, so that you can keep that same amount. So for example, we went from $4.69 per $100 in property value to $3.15, an extremely low, historically low property tax rate. You know, there was talk about whether or not it should have been increased back then, and that probably, had it been increased modestly, it probably would have solved some of those issues, but it wasn't. Mayor Berry made the decision not to do so, and then that's why there were efforts by Councilman Mendez and later with Councilwoman Vercher to raise that property tax increase, but that was unsuccessful this year. So the math is what really caused some of these issues, and again, had that property tax rate been increased, it likely would have resolved some of those issues.
And that is, you see that in the fact that there's a good number of people that saw their property taxes actually go down.
Yes.
In the midst of this growth, their property taxes went down. Even as their property value went up, their property taxes went down.
Yes.
And so. Yeah,
because that baseline was 37% was the average growth of property value in Nashville, and those properties that saw growth above 37% tended to get a higher tax increase, and those below, you know, I was examining some properties in Forest Hills, you know, near Belle Meade, which had a 22% increase, but they saw a few $100s off the tax bill because of the way that the math works, the way the formula works.
Yes, very interesting. Let's go to Reverend Fuzz. Reverend Fuzz, hello.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. What's on your mind?
I've tried to watch these number things that everybody keeps talking about, that it's a number something. I want to see, can we make 2 + 2 for tonight with our city's growth and where we're going? We hear about the number of people that move to Nashville every day. I guess that's right around 100 people or 80. Is it every day? That by 2040, we're going to have, another 1 million people will be here. I can't wrap around, when you do numbers, you have the number of homes or people or buildings within this area, and you kind of come up with an idea of how much you need each of those people to contribute in order to make things work. And in the last 10, 20 years, this city has, at least increased by 50% its size, but not Nashville, the region, 50% bigger. How is it that these people have not brought money, that they've added to the economy enough, that the police, that schools don't have teachers, and they say the reason they don't have teachers is because they can't pay them enough. I don't know the reason, I'm just saying, but we're looking at almost over 150 vacant teaching positions in the school system is what I hear from good places. How do we not have enough police? You know that if you move more people in, you gotta have more police. How can you not calculate something kind of simple like that, it seems? I love HCA, but wouldn't they be, did they take away money from Nashville? Did it mean anything? The little 60 million or 200 million that we cut a deal with HCA? How do we see that money come back from HCA into the city's treasury? I mean, can you show me an example of that? And I don't mean to talk so long, but that's a complicated way of saying things that shouldn't be complicated. I think 2 + 2 is 4.
Right.
How do we not figure out how to get enough money for a rich city like Nashville to run its public services?
Reverend Fuzz, thank you. And again, I think you're hitting it on the head. What about what he's saying there?
Yeah, I mean, he brings up some great points, and it's really complicated because, in a sense, this growth has added to prosperity, but has also increased the cost of living tremendously. I mentioned the apartment cost from before, but if you think about it, the median household income in Nashville is about $52,000. Meanwhile, Bankrate.com has said that to live comfortably in the Nashville urban core, you need $80,000 a year. So the math doesn't work there for most families, and that's a real problem. That's what's pushing people out into the outskirts and even outside the county. And a lot of the economic activity is still happening in and around the downtown area. So it is a numbers game, and you have worsening traffic because of that growth. And Nashville is very good about doing a lot of things, patching potholes, and the Hub Nashville has been very effective at getting complaints and taking care of issues, even removing scooters from areas that need to be removed. But it is hard. The other thing that we had talked about on the break was the tourist development zone. So tourism money that is spent in that area around the Music City Center has to stay in that area to essentially fund and continue to maintain those things around that area. So that's why they're not going into the rest of the county. And part of the budget from the Music City Center has been used, I believe it was about $10 million used to help with the national budget. But the question is, can you depend on that in the long term? These one-time allocations aren't going to be enough. Economic incentives were mentioned. I don't know about the $200 million, but I know there's a $1 million reference for HCA moving its headquarters to downtown. There were several economic incentives with regard to Alliance Bernstein, with Amazon bringing them there, and this was a choice. This was a decision by the city to say, we want these companies here, so we're willing to give some skin in the game so that they'll invest even more heavily here. One of the concerns that I have, actually there's two related to education. One of them has to do who competes for these new jobs. And we know that employers, for example, are looking for skilled workers. And that means people who are skilled already, so they're being poached from existing companies, recent college graduates, and then also those coming from out of state. Maybe from California or New York, where they have income taxes and the property taxes are so much higher, and the cost of living is so much higher. So to them, Nashville is really cheap, and that's also causing more pressure, upward pressure on prices here. So it's a combination of factors that are affecting us. We seemingly weren't ready for this growth on the one hand. On the other hand, in terms of telling Nashville's story, this great city, it certainly was very beneficial. The show Nashville. But I have a lot of conversations with folks in different circles that I run about the value of economic incentives. Mm-hmm. And I know under Mayor Cooper's administration, that's probably not going to be a tool that's used very often, if at all, because he certainly has been critical of those. He's
been very critical, and that's resonated.
Yes.
That there was a time maybe we needed that, but now we're this important, big city, and they need to pay us to come here. We don't need to be giving away all kinds of stuff. And there is that frustration. He was like, show me how we benefit from HCA. And I know we can have someone on here, you could probably do it, they could show, well, it's this number of jobs, but they get a huge, break on their taxes, and that frustrates people when we hear that there's not enough money to pay teachers and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's difficult too, because the teacher pay is below market, essentially, in terms of being able to afford to live here. We know of musicians that this has been a long time issue that has been getting harder and harder for songwriters to afford to live here. And part of it too is, on the other side, is the wage issue. Wages are not high enough for people who've been here for a long time, and they're not able to compete in this market. That means going elsewhere potentially, but if this is your home, where else are you going to go to?
Mm-hmm. All right, we have to take a break. Lucy, others, hold on the line. We'll get to your call right after this break. Be back right after this.